Today is April 24th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It's a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today out of the Big Book, we're going to be reading Personal Stories, Section 2, They Stopped in Time, Story number 8. We're going to continue our journey through Because I'm an Alcoholic by reading pages 340 through 343. And out of the 12 and 12, we're going to continue our journey through Step 12 by reading page 122. So guys, first of all, I apologize for my voice. I've got a little bit of allergies today, but I'll do the best I can with that. But on a brighter note, hey, we've been given a brand new set of 24 hours, and today we decide to be who we want to be. So I hope you're all doing well this morning. Life is good over here. I've got a giant cup of coffee in front of me and a smile on my face. Let's go ahead and get to the good stuff. Alright, my friends, so if you recall from yesterday's reading, our friend here in Because I'm an Alcoholic, her testimony starts off pretty interesting. She says, I suppose I always wondered who I was. I can relate to that. She said alcohol for a long time helped. It was the great improver for her for a while, but now we're starting to see the blackouts. Thankfully, in the last blackout she describes, nothing major happened, but I've got a feeling, if I've seen anything from any other stories, it's going to get worse before it gets better. So we're going to continue again on page 341. We're going to read up to 343 today. One time, we sailed from Guadalupe to a little island for a picnic, swam to shore from the ship. After lunch and quantities of wine, I was with a French ski instructor, talking to a troop of small boys on their way home from school, trying to explain to those tropical islanders what snow was like. I remember them giggling. The next thing I knew, I was back at the camp, walking to the dining room, apparently after swimming back to the ship, sailing to the port, and then taking a rickety bus across the island. I had no memory of what I'd done during those hours in between. The blackouts increased, and my terror increased with them. Telephone bills would inform me that I had made late-night calls to distant places. I could tell from the numbers whom I called, but what had I said? Some mornings I woke up with a stranger who had brought me home from a party the night before. These things weighed heavily on me, but I couldn't stop the drinking that had caused them. That too gnawed away any remnants of self-respect that I might have had. I was incapable of controlling my drinking and my life. I needed a drink to go any place. To the theater, a party, a date, and later, to work. I would leave my apartment, lock the door, and start down the stairs, and then turn around and go back in for another drink to get me where I planned to go. I needed a drink to do anything. To write, to cook, to clean the house, to paint the walls, to take a bath. When I passed out and fell into bed early, I woke up at 4 or 5 and had Irish coffee to start the day. I discovered that beer was better than orange juice to ease my hangover. Afraid my colleagues or students would smell my breath at work, I was careful to keep my distance. When I got up late and rushed off to the lab, fortified only with coffee, my hands shook so badly that it was impossible to weigh out the milligrams of compounds needed for an experiment. When I went out to lunch with another alcoholic, we might never get back to work that day. Somehow, I still managed to keep my job and most of my friends, social drinkers who were urging me to cut down on the alcohol. That cancel only made me mad, but I was concerned myself. I asked the therapist I was seeing, sometimes with beer in hand, would I have to stop? His answer was that we had to find out why I drank. I'd already tried, but was never able to find out why until I learned the answer in AA. Because I'm an alcoholic. With my attempts to cut down, I stopped keeping alcohol around the house, drank up whatever was there, over and over deciding not to get more. Then on the way home after work or an evening out, I'd have to see if I could scrape together enough money for a bottle. There were liquor stores just about every block, and I rotated them so the salesman wouldn't know how much I drank. On Sundays when the liquor stores were closed, I had to make do with beer or hard cider from the grocery. The horrors grew. Inner horrors. On the surface, it looked as though I was more or less keeping it together. But day by day, I was dying inside. filled with fears that I couldn't name, but which shook me to the core. My worst fear was that I was an alcoholic. I wasn't sure what that was. Except that I might end up on the Bowery in New York, where I had seen drunks curled up on the sidewalk. I made another New Year's resolution to stop drinking entirely until I could handle it, and then, I told myself, I'd go back to wine and beer. Hands trembling, body shaky, head splitting. I survived that first day until I was fairly safe in bed in an alcohol-free apartment. Somehow I made it through a couple more days, miserable in withdrawal. In spite of managing to stay dry at that time, I have no doubt that resolution would have crumbled like the others, and I would have been drinking again if I hadn't found AA. I had left the therapist who hadn't been able to tell me why I drank, and on New Year's Eve, I went to a party at the home of my new therapist. A few days later in the group, the therapist said, "You're drinking even more than I realized. You're an alcoholic. I think you should stop drinking, see a doctor, and go to AA." My resolution had endured 3 days, and I protested, "I'm not an alcoholic." That was my very last denial. "Well, say it another way," he suggested. "I am an alcoholic." It came out in a whisper, but it sounded right. I've said it thousands of times since then, and with gratitude. What I was most afraid to admit that evening was what would set me free. The therapist told me then and there to call someone who had been in our therapy group, a doctor on the staff of a hospital alcoholism service. "I'll call her tomorrow," I said. "Call her now." He handed me the telephone. When I asked her if I was an alcoholic, she said that from what she'd seen of my drinking, I might be, and suggested that I talk with her boss. Terrified, I made an appointment and kept it. She told me the symptoms of alcoholism, and I had them all. She gave me a list of AA meetings and recommended one. Alright guys, that's it for today's reading. Good stuff. Can't wait to come back to it here in a minute. Alright my friends, so out of the 12 and 12, we are again journeying through step 12, which is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. We tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And yesterday we talked about cheerfully working and not worrying about finances. And now we're going to continue on page 122. If our circumstances had happened to be good, we no longer dreaded a change for the worse. For we had learned that these troubles could be turned into great values. It did not matter too much what our material condition was, but it did matter what our spiritual condition was. Money gradually became our servant and not our master. It became a means of exchanging love and service with those about us. When, with God's help, we calmly accepted our lot, then we found that we could live at peace with ourselves and show others who still suffered the same fears that they could get over them too. We found that freedom from fear was more important than freedom from want. Let's here take note of our improved outlook upon the problems of personal importance, power, ambition, and leadership. These were reefs upon which many of us came to shipwreck during our drinking careers. Practically every boy in the United States dreams of becoming our president. He wants to be his country's #1 man. As he gets older and sees the impossibility of this, he can smile good-naturedly at his childhood dream. In later life, he finds that real happiness is not to be found in just trying to be a #1 man, or even first-rater in the heartbreaking struggle for money, romance, or self-importance. He learns that he can be content as long as he plays well whatever cards life deals him. He's still ambitious, but not absurdly so, because he can now see and accept actual reality. He's willing to stay the right size. But not so with alcoholics. When AA was quite young, a number of eminent psychologists and doctors made an exhaustive study of a good-sized group of so-called problem drinkers. The doctors weren't trying to find how different we were from one another. They sought to find whatever personality traits, if any, this group of alcoholics had in common. They finally came up with a conclusion that shocked the AA members of the time. These distinguished men had the nerve to say that most of the alcoholics under investigation were still childish, emotionally sensitive, and grandiose. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. I absolutely love the line right here. When, with God's help, we calmly accepted our lot. So acceptance is a huge part of sobriety. There are some things that we can change, but there are some things that we can't. And we accept those. Then we found that we could live at peace with ourselves and show others who still suffered the same fears that they could get over them too. I mean, that's the heart of step 12 right there. That we can live at peace, practicing these principles in all our affairs, and help carry the message to others. We found that freedom from fear was more important than freedom from want. Fear is a powerful thing, and again, I think I've shared it on the show a few times. A friend told me that the acronym FEAR is false evidence appearing real. 90% of the time, those fears that we're thinking about, they don't come true. It's false evidence. But perception is reality, so it's all mindset. It really is. One thing that's really helped me out with a positive mindset is obviously doing the steps, getting honest with myself, and step 10 is a big one. When I'm wrong, if things are still out of alignment just a little bit, I need to confess that to somebody. And I need to get right back on the beam, as Bill would say. No wasting time, even if it's something subtle. Because a lot of catastrophes for me were built from just a series of small compromises in character over time that I just didn't deal with. So now when I mess up, even slightly, or something's starting to disturb my serenity, I try my best to talk to somebody about it and pray about it. And that seems to keep me focused so that I don't do the same things that I used to do. I heard this saying one time, and I agree with it, at least for me. A man is what a man does. It's a daily thing. Just because I was good yesterday doesn't mean I'm going to be good today. Just because I had integrity yesterday doesn't mean I'll have it today. It's a choice every day. And these steps really help me with these choices. But I just love that. Freedom from fear is more important than freedom from want. And going back to the big book real fast, we see a light at the end of the tunnel for our friend here. The second therapist, man, he's not worried about seeing her for more sessions or anything like that, or hurting her feelings. He tells her the truth. He says, you're an alcoholic. So he kind of plugs her into AA. And we can kind of see that AA is something that does work for her. She's kind of already alluded to that, even though we haven't gotten to the part in the book where she's in AA yet. So it's nice to know the God of my understanding is working in this situation. I mean, I totally see it. In every single story that we've read, it seems like the God of my understanding lines things up just right for a person to meet a certain person or to have a certain situation happen that leads them to AA. And somehow, through the steps, AA transforms these people. They all say it in every one of these stories we've read so far. It's pretty amazing, really. When you look for the miracles, you'll see them. And speaking of miracles, if you're sober today, you are a miracle. And I'm sure those around you are very proud of you. It truly is one day at a time. I've heard people that have 30, 40 years of sobriety. I try to soak in, especially the ones that are just happy, peace, and free, no matter what circumstances come their way. I really try to hone in on what they have to say. And they say the same thing. They're no closer or further away from a drink than somebody who just walked into the room for the first time. Kind of goes back to what I was saying. A man is what a man does. It's a daily thing. We have to work at it every day. I heard another analogy that, we're never standing still. We're either moving forward or we're sliding back. Today, let's choose to move forward. Work in these steps. Being honest. Being willing to put in the work. practicing and protecting integrity, fighting against apathy, being courageous, joyful, laughing. I think they said that in the last testimony. We've been given a brand new day, and again, we get to decide who we want to be. All right, my friends, that's all I've got. I don't speak on behalf of AA, NA, Al-Anon. I don't speak on behalf of any religion or denomination or sect. I am just a friend in recovery who loves these 2 books. And if we're given another set of 24 hours, I'm looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.